Artisan Hi-Fi, Strange Nursery, Little Earth, and more. They've released a compact disc compilation of their work. And Steve Burke, who is one of the co-partners and says that On You Sound is an influence, will be here to talk about Beam 103. All that and a whole lot less on this edition of The Waves. Send now for your free apology. A release called Writings on the Wall, which is from Beam 103, Beam 103 is a space. It's a studio, a production space, but lately it's turned into a label and a distribution service. And we'll be talking about some of the artists featured on this, the first compact disc release from Beam 103, including this one, Drums Along the Gardener.
Beer gut. 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 Beer gut.
Drums Along the Gardener. That's called Beer Gut, and it's from Beam 103's Writings on the Wall. And joining me now in studio is one of the co-workers at Beam 103. Steve Burke is with me. Welcome.
Hello.
So how do you define Beam 103? I mean, I'm just trying to give the idea that it is both something that exists and something that produces.
Well, it's a really, really hard thing to describe. It actually is a cooperative where you have three main people, myself, Emmerich Donath, and Peter Horvath, and we're all music fanatics. And we decided to put together a studio. I was late coming into it, whereas they had another partner, I forget his name now, right off the moment, but we all got together some 4 years ago and decided to make music, build a recording studio, and have a rehearsal facilities, and it kind of carried on to distribution and having our own little labels to put our music on, and it's starting to grow.
But given the expense involved in doing just one of those things, either building a studio or providing a space for people to work in or providing a distribution service, you really bit off an enormous amount of the pie. Have you been able to make good with all of those things and all of those promises that you made to yourself?
Slowly.
Yeah.
Very, very slowly. The studio is running quite fine now. We have a lot of expertise in running a lot of things. We have an 8-track. We like to upgrade to a 16-track, but that's money involved. I'm the MIDI expert there, so I do a lot of MIDI productions. The distribution, we're just finally getting set for it. I did some scouting around in Europe as far as labels that would be interested in some of our pieces, because the main criteria that we have on the CD is mainly of the kind of European gender, very experimental, eclectic music. And it's really, really hard to find a market in North America because it's very mass productive and those type of things. So.
Yeah, you haven't really targeted a kind of market, you haven't targeted a market segment. You've more targeted a cultural segment, it seems to me, for the people involved in this.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Basically, all the bands on there I really like, and that's half the reason I put them on. The other reason was just to keep them together. There's a lot of egos out there, and they're really hard to deal with each other. And in order to get them together, you got to produce some type of viable medium that can be played on radio stations. We're basically doing mainly albums and cassettes, so CD was a big step in our factor. Main reason is that people like you, people like a lot of the community radio stations are getting into a CD format as far as to play. And the only way to get airplay and to try to get marketability is to to make a CD. So that was the real reason behind it.
Well, let's talk about the cassette culture. I mean, how viable is that now? How healthy is it with the growth of the CD industry?
Not very, and yet very, depending on where you go and who you talk with. The Europeans still, even though they're like CDs, the Germans in particular like albums. Same with the English. Cassettes are just another extension of albums as far as I'm concerned. The cassette culture in itself was a cheap media that artists could use to get their products out without costing an arm and a leg, because you can deal with minimum quantities of print up. Albums, you got to make the master and then get the lacquered cut and then get a minimum printing of, I think, 100 or 500. And that gets awfully expensive.
There was also a matter of a lot of the pressing plants having been bought up and monopolized by major labels for a long time. It was getting difficult to even get vinyl. Vinyl was becoming hard to produce.
Yeah, hard to produce. In Europe, now that CDs are coming into fashion, everybody's trying to get rid of their presses. Vinyl is still there and still very vital. And people have, if they've invested in 1,000 records, they don't want to get rid of them by CDs yet. So in that sense. But cassette culture, it's a cheap man's way out. You could buy a dubbing deck for, $800 and spend the next 4 weeks dubbing out 100 dubs, but that's your time, so it's a lot cheaper. And some of them, like Strange Nursery, some of their earlier stuff, they actually hand-painted the covers on them, so you had that uniqueness to them, which you just can't get with mass production. And in the next future, I could just see cassette dying out. There's a new cassette format, Dash, digital audio stationary head, and it looks like a very viable format, as in lasting a lot longer than the new DATs as far as the actual tape player is concerned. And the other one is writable, recordable optics, CDs. And they're looking at maybe 2-3 years down the line of actually getting those to the prices of what cassettes are. And if that happens, then the cassette industry dies, but it just doesn't die. It just goes into the CD format. And we're looking forward to it. I think instead of doing a vast quantity of runs, minimum of 500 or 1,000, we can do 50 or 60 and still satisfy with the a few people out there that might like the material that's on it.
But it's still possible. I mean, is it possible to bring any of the marketing techniques that you were mentioning, like Strange Nursery, doing a kind of custom artwork on each one of their releases? Can you bring that into a compact disc release, such as Writings on the Wall?
Some ways. Every single one of them's got a signature on it and a number from 1 to 500. It's in invisible ink, so you can't see unless you get a black light. I just did that for the fun of it.
Also because I guess when someone showed you that they'd bought it, you could see which number it was, maybe keep track of them.
Yeah, keep track of them.
It's like a homing device, isn't it?
Basically, yeah. It's hard to, I guess it's hard once you get up to 500 to actually make them as a non-mass productive device or product. Again, we're hoping for the future, so we can only do 50 at a time or 100 at a time. So we can. The other thing is that if you do 50 or 100, you might get some interested labels in Europe where they'll take the marketing out and the manufacturing, and you only get the royalties off of that. But it makes so you don't have to jump across the ocean every other month to find out if they're selling it or not, which is a big. And that's actually the real reason why I got the CD together. Is I went over to I guess it's the New Music seminar in Glasgow, which happened to be not exactly the most successful. And I was looking for labels for the CD. Unfortunately, they didn't get the CD done in time because the manufacturer screwed up and sent me 3 weeks behind schedule. And but I found out that Berlin Independent Days happened. That's a very big and very prosperous one. I just didn't have enough money to go for that. But next year, if and when I can get the second CD out, the Volume 2 out, we'll try to hit that market because it's very viable. The Germans love to buy. They're every single one of them is a record collector or CD collector now, and plus the fact you got 200, 300 record companies there representing themselves of the independent and the distributors, which are really important in Europe.
Well, also compilations are fun just because it seems like it's not only a release; it's a kind of programming as well. It's more than simply one vision. It's a collection of visions put together in a certain way. And so when you are buying an unknown product, it's great to buy a compilation.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I read a nasty article. I forget who it was by, but somebody in Ontario about putting together compilations and saying they just don't work.
Have they listened to an album lately? I mean,
yeah.
The amount of fill on an album these days is unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. And with a few bands, that only might have 2 or 3 good tracks that they've worked on 6 months on.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to put the best one on there. Our compilation is slightly different. We have pretty well everything across the board, reggae to thrash to jazz to whatever. You have to listen to the full CD to get the full justification.
Let's talk about some of those artists. We just heard Drums Along the Garden. They put out a release called Boronto.
Boronto, yeah, they're a great band. Live, they're just so high energy, and I just want to see them do so well. They're going to try to do a gig up in Montreal. I'm looking for somebody to pull them into a bar. They've got Boronto. They got a single out. They've got 2 other cassettes out. And by far they've had the most success in Toronto through one of the stations there that happens to really like thrash. And they're a fun band. Peter, the lead singer, and Drew, the guitar player, make a really, really good unit. And Zach, the bass player, just sits there and plays along. Zach hates CDs. He almost didn't want to put something on the CD, but his 2 partners kind of...
A lot of people do, and I think they're growing. More people are becoming convinced that this is not the technology of the future, and that this is not even the technology they favor yet. And if there is going to be something better than vinyl, it's still to come.
Could be. There's always going to be something better, something worse about whatever it is. CDs, it's the resolution you get, as in 44.1K. But records, your print qualities in some records are just horrendous. So.
That's right. It's such a gamble, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for an import. You can buy an import for now $25 with the GST.
Yeah, right.
And it can be good for 2 or 3 plays.
And that's about it.
All.
Yeah. So if you can get a DAT machine and record it, then you're okay.
Now you mentioned Strange Nursery. We're going to take a Strange Nursery track next. How long has Strange Nursery been working together?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to ask Jordan exactly that. I think around 3 or 4 years. It's Jordan Nicholas. Nicholas wants to go in the studio. Jordan wants to do live. I think they're going to both keep the name Strange Nursery. So they'll see.
But they're going to split into 2 units?
I think so. I like to see them get together back on one, but they're really unsure right now. Nicholas is in the middle of doing a project where he wants to get a CD done of just studio work. And Gerard's trying to get some live gigs down in New York, doing some performances down there. They're great, though. Their album, Strange Nursery, is a gem. That was basically done on a 4-track, gone through the final mix at Beam. And it's got, for what it is, some great resolution. There's other, you argue going to a 24-track, but it's got some characteristics that you just can't get in a 24-track, right? And that's the magic behind it. And I like to see them do more together. But if they do go their separate ways, it'll be just as different as when they're together. So in that sense, all the power to them.
Here they are as a duo from Writings on the Wall. Strange Nursery, a band in mitosis.
That's called Tanch. It is Strange Nursery from Beam 103's Writings on the Wall, and Steve Burke is with me tonight. We were talking about the cross-section, the variety of musics and styles that are on this, and you mentioned thrash, jazz, industrial, music like Strange Nursery, which you just heard, which is somewhat uncategorizable.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how are you able to? You must have an affinity for all this work. You must also be able to understand it, to understand where it fits. How are you able to balance and become a kind of an agent for the studio and for the space that's able to deal with all these things, take them all in at once? What's your how do you situate yourself in the midst of all this stuff?
Well, I love all the tracks. I love all the bands. That's probably the main criteria behind it. I'm involved with around 4 different bands of 4 different genders, from jazz. Right now I'm working with a rap, I guess we call it hip house band. Also work with industrial. I've always enjoyed industrial, and kind of, actually all of us are pretty well Adrian Sherwood fanatic. And he's done so many things right across the board. He originated in reggae, and then went into kind of industrial type sounds with the Sugar Hill Gang crew. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, there's a lot that is related to each other as far as the things that are part of each of the music in itself. And so I can relate to all of them. The essence that they're looking for. They're all my friends too, which helps a lot. I mean, everybody. Give you an example. Drums Along the Gardener used to play with the Canaries for the Bright Future, which is a kind of a fusion-y band, and we used to do live gigs. And the drums hate jazz, and the Canaries are jazz, except they like the Canaries because they're like a thrashy jazz type of setup, right? Just like something that you would not expect. Like one time you'd have this beautiful, gentle jazz piece going into a heavy metal piece, right? With like, virtuoso all over the place, and then going back into a jazz piece. The drums would fall off their chairs laughing.
But you, I mean, you must function also as an index of talents in some ways, where when somebody comes in and is looking for some element or something in a recording that they're not quite sure what it is they're looking for, you can put them in touch with some other talent, with some other musician or performer.
Yeah, liaison position. Yeah, I guess I follow in that category. It's oh dear, it's hard to say. I'm only basically representing one of 3 people in the grouping. 4 actually. Dave New being the other partner, who's now kind of gone domesticated with 2 kids. But I guess I do have a lot in common with everybody. I understand what they're coming from as far as the philosophy and their music is concerned. And as long as they have the integrity involved, that's I guess my biggest criteria.
So who pays for all this philosophy?
Oh, we all do. We're poor. I mean, anybody out there, please buy it. It's the kind of thing that we have to really work hard. We've been working hard in the studio trying to get it going. Yeah. And everybody who's involved has helped out in numerous ways. This is why I'm trying to get the initiative, get the distribution done, because that's probably where we can make some money off of it. Mm-hmm. Trying to get our percentages in, because studio time, I mean, if you really think about it, with the MIDI studios, if you got $20,000, you can put yourself a really good MIDI studio with like a DAW player on it, stuff like that, and you can really do yourself good cuts. But I mean, you have to be making a middle income earning in order to afford that, and especially in Toronto with the rent and things like that, it's really, really hard. And that's one of the reasons that we got together, is that we all have particular pieces of equipment that we could use and expertises, and the bands that we liked and supported could take use of it and do product, and that's our major stress, is actually get product out there. And if you think about it, $20,000 or $30,000 split 3 ways or 4 ways is around $8,000 each. It makes it a lot more viable for us to have a studio together, because you look at a lot of studios and you either have a sugar daddy behind you or a big company, or you go you go fold up because it's just very, very competitive there,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Toronto. I mean, God, there must be around 30 or 40 good 24-track studios going for almost the same rates as we are.
But at the same time, aren't there 40 or 50 or 60 bands out there that feel that they could come into your studio and use the studio and put something together that would be along the same lines as what you're doing? I mean,
yes.
the people that share your vision and want a piece of the pie as well.
Oh yeah, and we're most inviting for those bands to come in. We don't advertise all that much. It costs money, and plus the fact that the bands that might come in, it's hard to weed out, a rock and roll band to something that's a bit more eclectic, who doesn't want to go commercial mainstream, who wants to be, like I said, he wants to be true to his art form, as opposed to trying to get a viable commercial product and get a big major label to sign up, because that's it's not being innovative. Innovation is what I like. Somebody who's innovative, who's different, who keeps at it and really believes in what they're doing, and who doesn't have to sell it.
Do you have any musical projects of your own?
Very. I don't want to say right now. It's one of these things I'm going to keep hush-hush because they got particular names to them, and I've created fictitious characters behind them. And
Okay, well, don't give us the name, but give us some idea of what it's about.
In the lines of industrial thrash ambience. In a lot of factors, I guess. Without getting too precise, but quite a few bands that I have put on the CD I'm involved with directly. Play keyboards for, do programming as far as the sounds are concerned, or production or engineering. And with that, I'm quite busy. And I do have one particular band that is under my complete control. But I think you find that with almost every band on there. Not every band, but half the bands on there, other people have control and I help out. And
under your complete control sounds somewhat sinister, Steve.
Yes, I put on my little Hitler mustache and talk like Brian Mulroney and go, okay, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and we're going to sell you to the Americans. And it's more or less, I have a general idea of what I want, and I get the people in who are really good at doing it. I get this one guy, Mike Flock, who he heads out Abstract Gallery House Terrace. He's a phenomenal drum programmer, does house just immaculately well, and he's really good at ambience, and he needs a bit of control sometimes, and this is where I come in. And I'm working with him with another guy named Shannon. He calls him MC Shannon, but we'll have to get a better name for him. But he's a phenomenal rapper. I first met him at a abstract gallery gig. Afterwards, people are jamming. He comes up and starts rapping Shakespeare sonnets, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And anybody who can rap Shakespeare sonnets can rap for me. That's for sure.
Steve, it was nice to meet you tonight.
Likewise.
I'm going to give the address to Beam 103 after we listen to the last track in the profile tonight. This is Voices in Hi-Fi, a track called Torture Garden. Steve Burke, my guest. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, but it confuses you, doesn't it? It isn't quite clear. confuses you, doesn't it? It isn't quite clear, is it? Oh. What are you going to do? Something so simple. I'm going to put an end to all that confusion. You're Mrs. Henry Jekyll of Harley Street, dancing with your own butler and 6 footman. Dream that they've all turned into white mice and crawled into an eternal pumpkin.
Voices in Hi-Fi from Beam 103's Writings on the Wall, and that is a track called Torture Garden. Steve Burke, my guest tonight, and if you'd like a copy of Writings on the Wall, which we will continue to play samples from on Brave New Waves, you can write to 155 Liberty Street, B103. That's all part of the address. 155 Liberty Street, B103, Toronto, Ontario. The postal code is M6K3G3, and a check or money order for $17 includes everything, including postage, taxes, and Steve Burke's invisible autograph.